It's like the only job in the world that I can think of where I can learn something new every single day, like every single month. And I get to follow whatever whimsy or creative exploration catches my eye. I don't have to ask a boss about it. I don't have to justify it because it's almost like being curious is my job. And that part is like the best.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Tech. I'm Kevin Scott, Chief Technology Officer and EVP of AI at Microsoft. Today, tech is a part of nearly every aspect of our lives. We're in the early days of an AI revolution promising to transform our lived experiences as much as any technology ever has. On this podcast, we'll talk with the folks behind the technology and explore the motivations, passion, and curiosity driving them to create the tech shaping our world. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Tech. I'm co-host Christina Warren, Senior Developer Advocate at GitHub.
And I'm Kevin Scott.
And today we're bringing you a conversation with Zyla Foxlin, a super interesting person who's only 5 years out of college, but is already making a big impact as a maker and an engineer and a person helping build pathways into STEM for women and people of color.
Yeah, I have been a devoted fan of Zyla's YouTube content for years now. And I can't even remember when I became aware of her channel, but like she's just sort of in the mix of all of this maker content that is my favorite thing in the world to watch. And I love her breadth of interest. She's interested in everything from making rockets, like hilarious rockets sometimes. Like she launches a Christmas tree hundreds of feet into the air, like fully lit. And like just the technological challenge of doing that is super interesting. But she does rockets, she does furniture, she's made videos about making propellers for airplanes. She's just a really talented maker and does an unbelievably fantastic job, I think, presenting how making is done. And, I think she's a role model for all of us, honestly.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear this interview. I can't wait for this conversation.
Zyla Foxlin graduated from Case Western Reserve University in 2019 with a BSc in General Engineering and a concentration in Mechatronics and Creative Technology, as well as a minor in Studio Art. She began YouTubing in college with the channel Beauty and the Bolt as a way to provide public makerspaces access to free tutorial videos. Zyla was also the founder and CEO of Parahug, a company focused on integrating emotions and technology to create a fuller digital experience. She's previously worked at Disney Imagineering R&D and iRobot. She was named as one of Cleveland's Most Interesting People 2017, Crain's Cleveland Business's Notable Women in Tech 2018, and 20 in Their 20s in 2016, and was crowned Miss Greater Cleveland 2018 in the Miss America program. Her inventions have been featured in the New York Times, The Verge, Mashable, Google Mate with Code, and more. Zyla, welcome to Behind the Tech. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I've been watching your videos for a while now, and hopefully eventually we'll get into like how you are interested in the things or why you're interested in the things you're interested in. But like maybe we could go all the way back to the beginning and like how did you get interested in engineering and making in the first place?
Yeah, I think this is what I love so much about the maker movement specifically is I think that when I was a kid, it was sort of like you were interested in engineering or you were interested in art. And it was a little bit gender segregated, but it was also just like those were separate categories. And the maker movement has kind of combined the two. But I would say as a kid, I was kind of interested in both, but like mediocre at both of them. I liked tinkering. I liked playing with like toys that let you create something. And I think also a big part of it was I was an only child where my parents worked like really, really long hours. So I was kind of home alone a lot with just whatever recycling like garbage was around the house. And so I would entertain myself by making things and like building my doll houses myself instead of buying them or things like that.
Yeah.
Which is also sort of part of the immigrant experience. Like,
yeah. And where were your parents from?
China.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to like go back for a second, not to turn this into a therapy session or anything, but you said that you were interested in making things and art and you felt like you were mediocre at both. And like, this is one of those, like I've felt the same thing myself and still do, honestly. And I've got a 13-year-old girl and a 15-year-old girl, and like they're constantly, sort of digging into stuff. And like their first impression is that they feel like they should be better at a thing than they are when they first start. And like none of us are good at anything when we start. So like, have you struggled with imposter syndrome?
Oh, absolutely. I think as an adult, I have come to embrace that being like moderately good at a lot of things is more useful to me than being a true expert at just one thing. But there's this story I tell in probably every talk that I give, or like every time I have a chance to, which is I was my freshman year of engineering school and I had like been put in charge of this robot part. I was like the only freshman on the team and I put it together a couple weeks before the competition. I had done the CAD myself and no one had checked it. And nothing fit together. It was like the worst design you'd ever seen. It was supposed to be like completely sealing the electronics bay of a robot to regolith, which is like this lunar dirt that's got some weird static properties. And like there was holes in it. And so I had this meltdown in the robotics room floor. It was like 2 a.m. I was there by myself and this grad student walked in and he just wanted to grab some stuff and get out. And he like walked into this crying freshman. He was like, "What happened? Like, what is going on?" And I was like, "I'm so bad at engineering. Like, I'm not cut out for this." And he looked at me and he was like, "You played an instrument growing up, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm Chinese. I played the violin." And he said, "How many hours a day did you practice your instrument?" And I was like, "I don't know, like an hour for 12 years." And he was like, "How many hours a day have you practiced building things or engineering, making any of this?" And I said, "None." And he said, "How can you expect to just walk in and be good at it right away? It's not a natural skill that you're born with. It's something you have to develop." And that was like probably one of the most pivotal moments of my engineering career. And I wish that had happened to me when I was like 10 instead of when I was 18.
Yeah, I don't know what this pressure is that we place on ourselves that we must be perfect at a thing immediately. And like that was some sage advice that you got from a grad student, like really, really, really good advice.
Right. Especially like a tired grad student who walked in at 2 a.m. to not talk to people.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, so like let's go back to when you were a kid. Like, what particular things when you were little did you really like doing? So like I know some of the things you do now, like you make rockets, like you you do a whole bunch of casting, and you make furniture. Like you just got a gazillion things that you do. But like, what was it when you were a kid?
Honestly, none of that. I was a pretty stereotypical girly girl. I think I liked playing dress up, and one of the things that I think was one of the early ones was I got my friends and I got really into those like little magnetic animals that bend. Do you remember those? Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't even remember what they're called. And we ended up my locker at school became Bendyville, and we built like this 3-story mansion for all of these creatures. And I think I was building the really wacky parts of it, like the moving staircases and the bathtub that had water in it and stuff like that. But it was definitely that's a very like dollhouse kind of origin story, I would say. I got it, and I was really into making my own Halloween costumes, and they were always like really, really elaborate. And then I had a 5th grade teacher who was like just those teachers that will stick with you forever.
Yeah.
She was one of those. She was so cool. She was like a former wildfire firefighter, and she was a rock climber, and she was just so badass in the eyes of all of us 5th graders. And she was really into engineering, and she really wanted to like expose all of her students equally to engineering. So she applied for a grant for like little Lego robotics program,
Yeah.
the little Lego Mindstorms from the state, and she won it. And she started this like very small little robotics program, but her class throughout the year was always filled with engineering challenges. And if you like won enough of them, you'd get a candy bar or something. And so I was like so dead set on winning the candy bar, and spending so much time on these engineering challenges because I loved them. And I think like middle school is kind of when a lot of girls stop being interested in math and science. There's like lots of studies on why that is. But I think instilling it in 5th grade, right before I went to middle school and decided I hated math, was like enough to keep it going. So towards the end of high school, I could like reach back to those memories and say like, oh, this is something I want to do.
Yeah. Which is awesome. I mean, maybe we could talk a little bit about that, like why you think, or like why so many young women get discouraged in middle school. You know, I've done a whole bunch of stuff over the years with like gender equity and computer science, and like I've got 2 girls.
I was gonna say they just left middle school, right? But you made it through.
Yeah, and like my 15-year-old has, without any kind of pushing from us, decided that she's really excited about medicine and biology. And funny enough, like the thing that she credits her interest in medicine in is like we as like very, very bad parents weren't paying close enough attention to her Netflix consumption habits. And she, like, way too young, binge watched an awful lot of Grey's Anatomy, which we didn't watch even as adults. And, like, we went back and watched, like, oh, wow, this was not appropriate for a 12-year-old to be watching. But, like, it convinced her that doctors were cool. And, like, and that was the thing that she needed to go latch on to this thing.
Which is awesome. Yeah. And she's going to learn about all the adult stuff eventually anyways.
Yeah. But, you know, if a kid gets a chance, whatever that brings the chance, but if they get the chance to discover that they are interested in and good enough at something where they just want to go put the work in, like you were talking about before, where you get better and better and better, like that virtuous cycle is sort of the most important thing in the world. And like the thing that the thing that is so unfortunate is how often kids don't even get a chance to get on the trailhead. Like they just, like they don't have your wonderful 5th grade teacher, or, you know, like my bad parenting and Grey's Anatomy. And like they just don't figure out that like, hey, here's the hook. And that, you know, hard things are hard, like, but like, you just got to be interested enough to like go do the work to get good.
Yeah. And they have to be in like a safe enough environment where they can try things and they can fail. And I think most school systems are not like that. And so it takes like a family environment or a really special teacher, like you said, to create that environment. And it's just so hard to do in mass.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it is with math, like hard, because the way that we grade mathematics is like, you know, there's a right and a wrong answer to a problem. And if you get it wrong, like oftentimes you don't get an awful lot of feedback about what to do to get better. And then you just see the bad score at the end and it's like, okay, well, I'm bad at this, which is...
Right. Like it feels very black and white until you get up to like calculus or even pre-calc, where now you're having, or geometry actually is a great one, where like you could get halfway through proving the theorem, or you can kind of get most of the way there. And then it feels like there's some kind of progress. It's not like a multiplication problem where you either got it right or you got it wrong.
With math, I get frustrated with how we teach it, because we sort of very frequently introduce the mathematical concepts absent any kind of motivation for why this thing is important. And like, that's not how the mathematical concepts are invented. I mean, there's some things in, you know, pure mathematics that, you know, get invented just for the sake of the math. But like most math got invented because somebody was trying to solve a problem and like they needed a way to model something in the real world, or, you know, and like we just don't do a good job sharing that with kids early, unless you have an exceptional teacher.
Right, right. But even an exceptional teacher is working within the bounds of the fact that they're like teaching math class, and then the students are going to leave class and go to English class, and they're going to leave class and go to like science class. And there's only so much, at least in my experience, there's only so much the math and the science teachers can do to make their curriculums match up, especially if you're trying to meet state regulations and state requirements for testing and stuff. Yeah, I think even in engineering school, when you'd think like the whole curriculum is designed to be applied to the real world, the math was still so separate.
Yeah. So you got through the gauntlet. So how did you decide that you were going to go to engineering school or major in engineering when you went to college? Like, what did that decision look like?
Oh, it was funny, actually. So I applied to college for like marketing and psychology, I think, which is what the personality test that we took our junior or senior year. I don't know if your kids have taken this yet. They had us all take an online personality test. And it was like, based on your personality, you should be a therapist or you should be in marketing or something like that. And so that's what I applied for. I was like, I don't know. But I was captain of my school's robotics team at the time. So I did first robotics, and
that's awesome.
The problem was I was the only girl on the team for a while, and like girls didn't really get to build robots at the time. That was sort of just the general culture of first. And so I had never built on the robot. And when they were assigning everyone a mentor, they asked everyone, like, do you want to be on software? Do you want to be on mechanical? And I said mechanical. And they were like, cool, you can organize all the bake sales. So I didn't get assigned a mentor. I organized all the bake sales and I raised a ton of money because like when I decide to do something, I'm really efficient at it. So I became like the best fundraising outreach person. And all of this was like, I was like, maybe if I do a good enough job, they'll let me work on the robot. And the problem is that, no, if you do a really good job at the thing, then they could just give you more of the same thing. So yes. Then I took over all the outreach programs, which was actually, it was really rewarding and fun. And we'd go into schools and teach like little kids how to work on Lego robotics stuff. But then my junior year, I became a captain of the team. And at this point, I had never worked on the robot at all. I had done everything else on the team, including all the video editing. This is how I learned to video edit, was I had to make all the team's videos. And so it had like never crossed my mind that I could actually do engineering because I'd sort of been like very subconsciously rejected for the last couple of years. But at the same time, I was really involved in the theater program at my high school and I did tech. And the tech crew was like the polar opposite of the robotics crew. It was all women. Yep. And it was all just girls who wanted to play with power tools and build sets. And then like the fact that we actually had to run a show at the end was sort of second to, we were building multi-story sets. They were all being designed in CAD. It was like this really empowering, amazing group of women. And so that's how I learned how to actually build stuff, was building these sets, and how I learned to use power tools. And then, and I would build the field for the robot. I just wasn't like building the robot itself. But my senior year, we'd all applied to college. We'd heard back. It was the spring musical. And we're like sitting around in the tech room and everyone was discussing what they were going to do for college. And someone was like, Zyla, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. I got into, these two schools. I got to decide. And this girl was like, well, one of those schools doesn't have an engineering program, so why would you go there? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, you're doing engineering, right? Like you have to do engineering because all of us need to live in your basement when we grow up because we're all going into theater. But it was like a kind of interesting moment where everyone else at the school saw me as an engineer because I was so involved in robotics. And I was building stuff. So like, I probably had the skills. And so it was the tech girls that really talked me into it.
That's super interesting. I mean, super interesting. I mean,
they're all crushing it, and none of them live in my basement, for the record.
I mean, like my kids both love theater, and like I love this whole, like the theater techs are kind of, it's like being on a pirate crew. It's just whatever you got to do to get the thing done, and I love it. And you know, and there are a lot of like really famous makers who had that as their path. I mean, Adam Savage was, you know, at a point in his career was like theater tech person, and yeah,
You
I
have
mean,
to think so out of the box because this was kind of what we always said at Imagineering, but it's like to make someone believe in magic, you have to show them something they've never seen before, which
yeah,
means that you have to be always at the cutting edge of technology.
yeah, and I mean, yeah, I mean, what Imagineering does, I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's really fantastic because it's not just like giving people a fantastic experience for the sake of the experience. Like you're sort of showing them something about like a possibility for a world that might be. And I think it's really inspiring for kids. You know, they just sort of walk into these environments and like, oh my God, like how to like, I didn't know this was possible and how do they do it? And like, I want to do this. Like it's really cool, that inspiration piece of it.
Yeah. It's a little bit like when you're a really small kid and you are believing in Santa Claus, and then you grow up and you realize Santa Claus is there's probably not small children listening to this podcast, is maybe not real, and then it's like your parents. And I think with Imagineering, it's a similar thing where it's kind of like when you're a really small kid, the whole point is that you believe in the magic, and
yeah.
But I think what makes Imagineering so exceptional at what they do is that as you grow up, the magic doesn't fade even when you know it's not like what it is. It's just so well executed, and like the technology is so flawless and seamless that you can, as an adult, still immerse yourself in that world.
Well, it's also an important thing for all of us to remember. Like I think we have this in us when we're little kids that like we can believe that the magic is real. Like we can believe that the impossible is possible. And you still need that as an adult. Like I'm sure every day, like you're encountering things that you thought were impossible, or everybody around you thought was impossible. It's like, all right, how do I make a living as a YouTuber? Like, how do I, how do I go like build things that I've never built before? It's like all about like you have to believe this, slightly irrational thing that you're going to be able to like make a very hard thing work.
Yeah. But so, now as adults, we have like the privilege of being the ones that get to fight through it and make it work, which is kind of fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. So, so you get to college, you go to Case Western, which has a really good engineering school. So talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you choose which engineering discipline that you wanted to go into, and like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, there was a huge number of my friends that went into Case being like, I am here to do biomedical engineering. That's why I'm at this school, which is very famous for biomedical engineering, and that is what I want to do. And I was always like, I didn't even know what BME was until I got here. How on earth did you find this? So I picked mechanical because I wanted to build robots, and I feel like mechanical is one of the most obvious forms of engineering. Not obvious, but like everyone knows that's kind of like the stereotypical engineering in a way, maybe.
Yeah.
If you want to build things. And then I went in actually as mechanical and aerospace engineering, because I've always loved airplanes and flight, and I had worked at an airport in high school to like get my flight hours and do flight training. So I did Mechie Aero, and like pretty quickly realized that I didn't want to do aero because I actually didn't care about why the planes flew. I just liked flying the planes. And so I switched the aero to electrical because I wanted to be able to like work on an entire robotic system rather than just the mechanical part of it, because it was kind of the integration of the two that got me really excited. But I don't think I declared that and I didn't do a full electrical degree. I did like 80% of a mechanical degree, and then like 20% of an electrical degree, and into a combined degree.
Awesome. And so, what was your experience like? I know a bunch of folks who have gone to get Mechie degrees or double E degrees. And like I'm a computer scientist by training, but like I know a bunch of folks who go to engineering school, and they get trained in a flavor of engineering, which is like you sit in, like you got a bunch of software you're using, and like you sort of think about what you're building, but you don't do as much building as you actually might like. I have a good
Yeah.
friend's daughter who just a few years ago graduated with a mechie degree from like a very good engineering school, and
Mhm.
turned down lots and lots of jobs that were about sitting in a cubicle doing CAD work, just because she wanted to work in a machine shop somewhere, which
Yeah.
has been a great choice for her, given what she
Good.
enjoys doing. So I don't know what that's
I
been,
hope she's
what that
happy.
was like for you.
Yeah, I had a pretty similar experience where I've never been good at school. Like I was never good at classroom learning. I have to physically do something to really understand it, or I have to apply something to a project, and then I'll like really understand why or how something works. And so classes in college were a struggle, and I kind of uh, early on in college decided, I mean, I knew I didn't want to go to grad school. I just wanted to work in industry and be able to like physically build stuff. Um, so I was kind of like, all I have to do is pass. I don't need to get straight A's because I'm not applying to anything with my grades. I'd rather be applying to things with a killer portfolio, and be doing the thing I want to be doing in the first place. Because I think college is the value of college is less about the classes themselves and more the environment that you get to live in for 4 years or 5 years. And you get access to like machine shops and labs and student organizations and clubs and competitions that are only available to college students. So my attendance was like maybe mediocre, but I spent a lot of time in the robotics lab or in the makerspace that I worked at learning that way.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to find my own way there.
Yeah. Which I think makes a lot of sense. So you went to school, you got a great education, and then you're trying to figure out what to go do. And like at this point, like in school, you're making YouTube videos already. You've learned how to edit from high school. Like and you went and worked in industry, so like I know for a lot of folks, like particularly these days, like it's a dream that you can go be a full-time maker. You get to decide like what you make. You go create a YouTube channel, or like you figure out how to build a community around you. Like how did that progression go? Like, how did you decide, like, hey, this is where I want to go work, and then eventually, like, you obviously like left, these jobs, and like you became, well, and actually, it sounds like twice. Like, you founded a company, so like maybe this is the second time you've been an entrepreneur.
Yeah. It's a disease. Run away. um, yeah, I think I had a really unconventional college experience in that my sophomore year, I was at a hackathon, MHacks, which used to be like one of the biggest hackathons in the country. I think it might still be. And I built this like really silly little teddy bear project where like if you hugged one, it was connected to the internet, and then the other one would like gently vibrate out the hug and vice versa. And so we pitched it at the end of MHacks, and this VC from the Bay Area, it was like two people who'd left the Teal Fellowship to start their own company. We're
Yep.
like, if we give you some money, will you turn this into a company? And so we were kind of like, how much money? Will it buy us like an egg for our ramen noodles? And so they gave us $1,000 for free. It wasn't an investment. It was just like a grant.
Yep.
And they were like, you should finish building this prototype and then, try to turn it into a company. So we did that. We ended up winning a competition, launched it at the Consumer Electronics Show like later that year. And then that just kind of spiraled into this wild startup experience that I'm glad I had, but I'm glad I'm not still doing. And that was the first time I kind of dropped out of college. So at some point when our Kickstarter got funded, I left school. so that I could work on manufacturing full time. And then eventually I shut the company down and went back to school. And in doing that, I got more involved in the makerspace that I had worked at through all of college. And gender equity has like always been something that's really important to me, just because like I look back at my own life and I'm kind of sad at all the opportunities that I didn't have, because I looked different than like everyone else who was interested in the things that I was doing. And the makerspace, when I was a freshman, we were in the basement of an engineering building. It was like one floor, lots of like really fun toys and tools, but it had received so much grant money, and the end goal was to move it into this 7-story building. And it's amazing. It's a really cool makerspace. It's called ThinkBox, and it's in Cleveland. But we moved into that building my sophomore year, and all of a sudden, like all of the way that we as teaching assistants or like people who worked at this makerspace could help people changed. And it went from I could sit down with a person and really walk them through how to use the tools and how to do their project, into someone comes in, tells me what they're trying to do, and I would put them in front of a computer with like a document that just had instructions on how to use that machine. And it's a very different experience. And the thing that I noticed was, and those documents were very overwritten. They were like very engineer written. So to use a MakerBot, we had like MakerBot Replicator 2s. It was like a 75-page document. Yeah.
Wow.
So you can imagine someone walks in and they want to like 3D print a little desk ornament for their sorority sister. And now they're facing this 75-page document that's like borderline unintelligible because it's just so overwritten. And the thing that I noticed, but there was like so much liability and red tape everywhere because we're also like funded by like people. It's a university and it's funded by the state. And so I reached out to one of my friends who was a videographer, and I was like, can we try to make video tutorials for all of these machines and see if that helps? Because I was a Saturday shift. I remember this shift so well. I had like 8 people come in at the same time, and I was like really trying to bounce between them, but I still had to follow the policy, which was to put them in front of a computer and show them this thing. And they were like mostly women and girls, like the range of ages, because it was also open to the public. And every single woman that I put in front of this document, when I like left and moved on to the next person, just like quietly closed the computer and left the space. And I was like, that sucks, because we've created this amazing space, but it's a space where like women and minorities are kind of like not conditioned to feel welcome already. And they talked themselves into going. They like got their confidence together and they walked into this scary space, and then they got faced with like this massive document. And it kind of like all of the I can't do this crashed back down on them. And then like they left before I could chase them down and find them. And so I started making video tutorials on how to use the tools in this space because I thought it would help. And a lot of the research I had done said like a lot of girls stop being interested in math in middle school for some reason because teachers, they're used to having female teachers in elementary school, and then all of the math teachers in middle school and high school tend to be men. And there's like that doesn't affect boys in quite the same way for some reason. But I was like, what if like these tutorials are being taught by a girl that looks just like them, or that's the same age as them? It's just another college student being like, hey, this isn't that hard. You can do it. Here's how. And a 5-minute video is so much easier than a 75-page document.
Yeah.
So we made like 10 of these videos and gave them to the makerspace for free. And we were like, hey, we made you some videos. Do you want them? And the woman who had just started running the space said no. And I was like, really? Like, they're free. You can just use it. Like, they can be part of the document. And she was like, no, someday you're going to graduate and then there will be no one to maintain the videos. So this is like not a sustainable path. So we were kind of irritated and we were like, fine, we'll post them on YouTube. And that's how Beauty and the Bolt, which was the first channel I worked on, was born. And we just were like, maybe people will find them naturally and be able to use the space. Like, they can watch the video at home before they come in. Even if the videos are not supported by the makerspace, it's still super helpful. And we did see we were in the gym. The friend and I who started it, we were at the gym one time and we saw a girl on a treadmill like watching the video. And then the next day I saw her in the makerspace and I was like, yes, score.
So awesome.
But a couple months later, we got an email from a K-12 school district that was like, hey, like your videos are really helpful. They're fully integrated into our curriculum, but we have this one other machine that you don't have a video for. Is there any chance you have access to this machine and you could make a tutorial? And we were like, oh, just so happens that we do. So we made that video and we put it on YouTube. And we got like a couple more of those. And then this K-12 school district hired us to come to their makerspace and make a bunch of their curriculum videos. And then we did some poking and we were like, oh, we're listed on like Harvard's makerspace website, Cornell's makerspace website. Everyone was using our videos except for our own makerspace, which, you know, like just politics. But it was super encouraging to say like, oh, we're doing work that people actually want.
Yeah.
So it snowballed into a nonprofit. So it was a 501c3. And when I graduated, I decided to work on the nonprofit full time for a year and just like see how it went.
I don't know whether people fully appreciate how awesome YouTube is as a maker. I feel like anything that you want to figure out how to do, somebody has just been extraordinarily generous and thoughtful with their time and has like posted something about it. And I mean, for me at least, like I learn probably 10 times faster by watching someone do a thing than by reading a book about how a thing gets done. And, you know, also watching someone do it just is a demonstration that the thing can be done. And so then I'm just more encouraged. Well, like, I'm going to go try this. Like, this doesn't look that hard.
Yeah.
And
and sometimes it is.
Yeah. And sometimes it's super hard. And I'm like, oh man, way in over my head. Like I need to go get some help. But like, so, you know, surprisingly, like you can figure a ton of stuff out just by watching other people doing it and then trying to go practice yourself. And I mean, like I'm an old man, so like you may not even know what this is, but like when I was a kid, you know, we lived in rural Central Virginia, and we had you know 3 network TV channels and PBS, and on PBS they had the New Yankee Workshop, which was this woodworking show done by this guy named Norm Abrams, who, like, if you're in my generation, like he's, you know, the
The guy.
Yeah, he's like, you know, your Jimmy DiResta or, you know, Zyla Foxland or whoever your,
Right.
you know, your YouTube maker hero is. Like he was, and it was 30 minutes a week. You got to see Norm go make stuff, and it was just enormously encouraging. And like now you've got everything everywhere all the time, and it's awesome.
Yeah, every problem you could like possibly want to solve, someone has poured so many hours into it.
Yeah, and so I mean, you know, on the one hand, like thank you for for, you know, wanting to do that, and on the other, you know, aside from seeing people, you know, use your content, like you have this intention when you make it, like I want to be helpful to someone in some particular way, like it sounds like. And so seeing other people like take your content and like it's actually helpful, like must be super rewarding. But like, are there other things as well? Like there must be community, there must be, you know, like obviously there's income and, you know, self-determination about what you do, but like talk about what this is like as a career.
Ooh, it is it's like the only job in the world that I can think of where I can learn something new every single day, like every single month. And I get to follow whatever whimsy or creative exploration catches my eye. I don't have to ask a boss about it. I don't have to justify it because it's almost like being curious is my job. And that part is like the best. There's obviously like it's a lot of work. Like editing is a lot of work. Creating videos is a lot of work. But in the end, like I don't like sitting at a desk. I don't like sitting still. I like being out in the shop and actually building stuff. And the freedom, like just how much freedom a job like this has is amazing.
How do you choose what to work on? Because like I feel like everybody has like a really interesting creative and editorial process. Like there's some people like, you know, Mark Rober, who's like trying to do, you know, like a few times a year, like a pretty sensational thing, and, you know, optimizing for like, I'm going to teach you something very complicated, but I'm going to do it in a way where it's, you know, going to go viral. Like there are a bunch of YouTubers right now that I've been watching for years. It seems like 2 years ago, maybe this was a pandemic thing, or maybe it was a maturity thing. Like almost every YouTuber I watched, like started making content about whatever remodeling project they were doing because they finally made enough money to buy a house. And like now it's so funny.
Luckily, I live in LA, so that's never going to happen.
So like, how do you pick? And like, you have such a diverse range of things that you've done.
Yeah, I think it's pretty random. And this is probably one of the things I struggle with the most is a lot of times there's a project I want to do because I want it, except that I don't think it's going to do very well on YouTube. And so I have to kind of pick and choose, like, can I afford to do something like that right now? Or do I really need the income from like a banger? And something that like one of the things I've been thinking about a lot this year as we kind of like go into the new year is last year, I accidentally put myself in a situation where I had to churn out like 4 videos a month for a couple months, which was just a perfect recipe for burnout. And it was in like a pretty toxic environment. And I was like struggling so hard to keep my head above water. I didn't have a weekend for months. And I wasn't proud of any of the things I made because it was just like, I got to get it done and I got to meet the deadline. Like, get it done, meet the deadline, get it done, meet the deadline. And so I was kind of like, as I got more tired, I was dialing the projects back a little bit. So I almost felt like each project was getting progressively easier because I was like, what can I whip out in 2 days so that I can like get 8 hours of sleep in 4 days? And now as I go into the new year, I'm like, all right, I need to go back to 1 video a month. And it's a video that I'm really proud of because in the end, I had an amazing conversation. I went to a wedding of one of my best friends in October. And at some point I got to just like talk and shop with the photographer of the wedding. And so we're like standing in the corner of this wedding. And I was like, so, you know, what are your plans for the rest of the weekend when this wedding is over? Are you going to get stuck editing? And he's like, yeah, I'm actually jumping on a plane to New York. And I'm going to edit these wedding photos on the plane. And I was like, oh, cool. What are you doing in New York? And he said, I'm watering my personal garden. And I said, what does that mean? And he was like, I love photography and I love shooting weddings because I love like being part of, you know, these people's lives. And it's really good money as a photographer. But you can't just keep doing things for other people. You have to go water your personal garden so that I still love photography. And so he was like, there's a photography collective out there. We're going on a bunch of street walks. We're going to do like graffiti walks. And I'm just going to make art for 3 days. And then I'm going to come back and shoot like an elopement over in Malibu or something like that.
Awesome.
And that was such an amazing conversation that I needed to hear it because this was smack in the middle of my like super crazy time. And so I think it's really important for creators to also be able to water their personal garden. Not everything we do has to be for sponsors or for agencies or other people.
Well, I'm guessing it's sort of tough to do that. Like I've wholeheartedly, you know, believe that. And I, you know, support that and all of the people who work for me. And funny enough, like the making stuff, like I'm sitting in the middle of a shop right now. Like I've got a CNC machine, you know, over here, like, you know, that's Bamboo Carbon X, you know, 3D printer. Like I've got so anyway, like I do this entirely to, you know, like water my own personal garden. Like I love being a computer scientist. I love being CTO of Microsoft. I love helping other engineers be able to build, you know, super complicated things. And I love seeing, you know, how those things, you know, play in the world at massive scale. but occasionally, like, I just need to go into my shop and like make something with my own two hands, and it takes 2 hours, and then and I can be just as in love with one of those things. Like yesterday, I'm making this sake cabinet right now. So it's got Kumiko doors, and it's got a place for like 4
Cool.
little sake cups, and I'm going to wood turn them, and I'm going to urushi lacquer them. And then
Oh
I
my
was
God, I
going to
cannot wait to see pictures of this.
yeah, well, I'll post them on Instagram. And then
Okay.
it's got a spot in this cabinet for a sake flask, and I was going to commission someone to make it, and now I've like talked myself into like, oh, I'm going to slip cast this and like fire it and glaze it myself. And
Amazing.
yeah, so I went out and bought a whole bunch of tools for slip casting, and then like they were sitting in my shop, and I needed to make a place to store them. And so a thing that I went and did yesterday is I made some stupid little box that was and
Yes,
like
little boxes
I
can
took
fill your cup.
yeah, I took the effort of like doing box joints, and like it was just a silly little thing. And I walked over and like touched this thing like 6 times during the course of the day. Like it's the millionth
Aw.
box I've ever made, but I was like, oh, like isn't this box nice?
The human brain is so simple.
Yeah, it is. But like I'm guessing a lot of what you do to water your own personal garden looks a lot like what you do to make money. And so
Yes.
like there must be an enormous amount of pressure for you to think that you have to turn everything that you make and do into a video.
Yes.
Which has to be like oppressive at some level.
It is, and I think it's also one of those things that's really hard to talk about because I have a dream job. Like I can't complain about it. But it is a really hard thing where like the thing I love to do the most, I now have contractual obligations, which means that like if I'm sick, I have to go do it anyway. If I'm tired, if something's happening. But it's so funny you brought up the box thing because I did the exact same thing yesterday where I've been procrastinating getting my laser cutter set up in the new. I just moved. Been procrastinating getting a laser cutter set up in the new house, and finally yesterday I got it set up so that I could make. This new place has a lemon tree, and I'm like pawning lemons off on everyone that I know. So I just made like a laser cut cardboard, like box,
Awesome.
lemon box that has lemons all over it, and I'm having a big party for Chinese New Year this weekend. So everyone who comes to the party gets to get like a little lemon box that has a bunch of lemons in it. And it's such a silly, tiny thing, but like not filming things feels so good sometimes of just doing things for the sake of doing them.
Well,
but I think it's also important.
And not having a deadline.
Yeah.
It's like this thing will get done when I decide it gets done.
Yeah. And it's funny how much little tiny projects that don't take very long can still fill this like monkey brain part of us that just needs to start and finish something and feel accomplished and like use your hands, design something and build it. It's such a therapeutic process.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really wish I think more people would like have better mental health if they could figure out like some way to exercise the creative impulse that is in all of us. And like a whole lot of people just for whatever reason, like they don't have an outlet, they don't feel like they've got an outlet. And everyone in my family like did something with their hands. Like my mom, who was a tax preparer, like just crafted all the time, crocheted, sewed, like made little things to sell at craft fairs. My dad and my granddad were construction workers, but they worked on cars and made furniture in their shop. So like everybody constantly like had this, like they just made things, and I think it made them happier than just being in this mode where all they did was consume things that other people made.
Yeah, and it's I think especially important right now where we're like so addicted to our little glowing screens, to be able to just put all of that aside and like I personally find woodworking to be like exceptional at this because it's a tree. It used to be a tree. And when you work with wood, you have to think about the way that the tree lived and the way, like where it came from and what its properties are and how to work with it and not against it. And like anytime that I'm not working, pretty much I'm outside, like camping, climbing, backpacking, canoeing somewhere. And so it's like this beautiful blend of the two things.
Well, and then it becomes this artifact, and like it's in your life. And I mean, like I watched the video you just posted recently about the table that you made, and so like the tables, people are going to come in, they'll see it, like you can tell them you made it, like there's a story around it, like you can, like for the things that I make that are like in my environment, like I'm just constantly looking at them, and like it doesn't bring back the full feeling that you get when you make it, but like I can remember a little bit of the good feeling that I had when I made it.
Yes. Especially there's some things that are like really good at this. I think like instruments are like this.
Yeah.
Furniture is like this. Things that you use. It's actually funny. I talk a lot about how the biggest kindness that you could do if I make you something is like beat the crap, break it, because things are meant to be used. And like I built a sailboat earlier last year for a youth sailing program, and like there is no way that sailboat is ever going to look the way that it looks the day I delivered it. It's being sailed every day by like 12-year-olds. Yeah. But that's what it should be. That's the way like homemade objects should be treated.
So what are you excited about in the future? Like either, with the maker community, like things you're excited about learning, like what's interesting?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think well, one of the things, like very selfishly, one of the small things I'm excited about is I have a new workshop. So I just moved, and so now I'm kind of like nesting in my new space. I built a brand new workbench. I'm going to build a rolling clamp rack so that I can take my clamps with me everywhere. So like again, it's all these tiny little things that kind of like feed your personal garden. But in the broader scheme of life, I think I'm really excited to get to know all of the new people coming into the community, and I think the community is why we do a lot of this in a way. It's like, I think I the core of why I like to make things is because I used to just love making things for people as like gifts or, and getting to know people who have the same interests as you. And for a lot of 22, I had long COVID for a little while. So I was like pretty recluse and a homebody, and now I'm finally getting back out there, and I'm like going to more events and meeting more people, and it's exciting.
That's awesome. So we're almost out of time. Like maybe two last questions for you. So who is your favorite YouTuber?
Ooh.
Or maybe you can't answer this because you're a YouTuber and like this will cheese like a bunch of your friends off.
I'm trying to think. Well, so like my cousin has a dance YouTube channel. He's a dancer. So I'm like, he's family and I love him a lot. So that's my safe answer is my cousin because he's my cousin and I love him. As far as like people I look up to, I don't know. I think everyone is different. There's like the different veins of watching YouTube. Like there are people outside of my space that I watch to to get inspired in like music or in dance or in like a million other things. And then there's people in my space that I watch because I enjoy their content and also because they're running their business in a way that I admire a lot and want to replicate to some extent for myself. And then there are the favorite YouTubers in that, like, they're the people that when I was just getting started were really nice to me and like kind of took me under their wing, and they didn't care that I had no subscribers. They just like were genuine and good people. But I think putting people into those boxes is a scary prospect.
Yeah. I I have all of these YouTube. You're one of them. I subscribe to you, and so
Oh,
every
thank
time one
you.
of your videos pops up, I watch it. And then I've got like all of these
Thank
sort
you.
of topical channels that I watch. So like I'm trying to figure out like slip casting right now, and so like they're just these
Yes.
like very topical people that like this guy Van Tiki who like makes these incredible videos about slip casting tiki mugs.
Oh my God. I love the like super specific channels like that.
And he's so good. Like, I don't understand how this guy doesn't have like a bazillion views on his videos. Like, they're so amazing. And like
Yeah.
just such good, helpful content. If you're trying to, like, I'm not making tiki mugs, but like it's the single most helpful thing I found in trying to figure out how to slip cast this sake flask I'm intent on making.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I feel like I'm gonna get off of this recording and start falling down the slip casting rabbit hole.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that keeps wanting to put a kiln in my backyard. Like I really want a kiln for some reason, even though I've never done ceramics.
Kilns are fun.
Kilns are fun.
Yeah. I mean, so maybe this is a question. How on God's earth, as expansive as your interests are and as limited as your space must be, how do you
Yes.
figure out what goes in the shop and what doesn't? Do you have a system?
I sort of have a system, but it's mostly chaos. I will say this is not directly answering the question, but I think the answer is actually you build a community of people who have all of the things in your interests. And I love going over to like other people's shops and learning from them at the thing that they're an expert in. This is like one of my favorite things to do. And I feel like everywhere I go, I kind of like adopt like an older neighbor who's got 50 years of woodworking experience, or like an older jewelry maker who's been doing this for a really long time, and then I just go over and use their stuff, and then it doesn't have to clutter my space, and I get to hang out with someone really cool and really interesting. So that's more how I manage it. And then like my own shop is very woodworking and composites heavy because that's kind of the thing that I do.
Yep.
In every video, I'm either working with like carbon, fiberglass, or wood. And so I'm sort of the person that people can come to when they need that.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a community cycle that we're all just giving and taking from each other.
Yeah, and I really respect. I've done a little bit with fiberglass, but never anything with carbon fiber, and so like I
Just give
really
it a try.
respect.
It's itchy though.
Yeah, I don't know. Like sometimes, like I convince myself of things like that. It's going to be itchy, and then I don't do it, and then and then I try it, and it's not as bad as I thought, and then I'm like, why did I wait so long?
Yeah. I think like composites are really not as hard as people paint them out to be. And a pro tip is if you wear a nitrile glove under a work glove, then the dust will get into the work glove and kind of get stopped before
that's smart.
That helps a lot.
Because like I had everybody and their cousin when I first decided that I was going to do Urushi lacquerware. They were like, "Oh no, like you shouldn't do that. Like you're gonna like break out." Because so for folks who don't know, like Urushi is this ancient Chinese and Japanese technique for making lacquered vessels, and it's a different sort of lacquer than what we're used to, because it cures actually only in humid environments, but like it's like unbelievable once it's cured. It's beautiful, it's water resistant, it's acid resistant, it's food safe, it's like all of these things. They're lacquerware pieces that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, and like very, very often, like they are like the substrate is wood, and so like it protects the wood underneath from rot for like centuries.
Forever, yeah.
But urushiol, the compound that's in this stuff, is the same compound that's in poison oak and poison ivy, and so like if you get it on you and you are not one of the 10% of the population that's immune to contact dermatitis from urushiol, like you're going to have a rash. But like you wear gloves and you'll be fine.
Yeah. And that's, I feel like like that's the attitude you should have with all of these chemicals anyway. Like you can develop sensitivities to epoxy, to wood, to carb, like all of this stuff. So it's just, you have to do it right off the bat.
Cool. Well, this is
That's awesome.
probably a strange question for you, but I ask it for everyone that's on the podcast. So outside of work, what do you do for fun?
Oh, I do so many things. This is my top anti-burnout tip is when you get burned out or you're starting to get burned out, like pick up a new hobby. And I kind of recommend hobbies that you kind of know you're going to be good at right off the bat. And that amount, like putting in work and improving at something, is such an important feeling to combat burnout. And so I've collected some very strange hobbies over the years. I'm really into climbing, rock climbing. I do a lot of salsa dancing, swing dancing, camping, going outside.
You're a pilot.
And then, I'm a pilot. I have a Cessna 140 that I fly around, which for some reason my brain kind of clumps into going outside because it's always like adventures out to backcountry strips and stuff.
Yeah. Well, those are good hobbies. Super good. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And thank you for doing what you do. I think you are an inspiration to tons of people. And certainly what you're doing is getting folks to do more with their hands and to be more creative and to feel confident that they can do things that they might otherwise not be confident that they can do, which is a awesome thing to do for the world. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was super lovely getting to know you.
Awesome.
Well, that was a fantastic conversation with Zyla Foxland. So there's so many things there. I think you nailed it at the beginning. She really is somebody who I think is like an inspiration for all of us, and so many people can learn things from her. But I was really struck by, I think, the fact that, and I really appreciated her being kind of honest about this, about the fact that other people around her saw her as an engineer before she even did.
Yeah.
And she's so clearly an engineer in everything that she does. But I really thought that it was cool to kind of hear about the fact that it was like her theater tech girls who were the ones who were really kind of pushing her and seeing the things that everybody else, in my opinion, probably should have seen in her. And that, I'm glad that she was able to see in herself to get her to take that step and study engineering in college. Yeah. How important do you think it is for people, and not just, girls and people of color, but I think for everyone, to have people who are willing to kind of see them and see what potential they have, even if we don't see it in ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's critical. We talked about it a little bit in the show, and honestly, this is the whole point of this podcast, right? Is all of us are capable of something amazing, and it's so awful, I think, when we can't see those amazing things in ourselves, like where the barrier to us doing something that we may potentially be great at, that everyone around us is going to benefit from us and that's going to bring us personal joy, is because you just can't see yourself doing the thing. And it's one of the reasons why I love what she does, because on multiple different dimensions, like she's trying to encourage people to do a bunch of these things that, you may not think. I can make a rocket, or I can make a piece of furniture, or I can make a sailboat, or I can, all of the things that she has, just relatively courageously decided that she's going to do, whether she at the outset knows exactly how to do it or not. That's sort of how you get better at anything, is like you got to start trying somewhere. And I think she's just an incredible inspiration to get a whole bunch of people to start trying. And a big part of that, I think, she described this about her makerspace experience. Like a lot of people, when they approach a thing that's different and new, that has a reputation for being hard, and sometimes the reputation for a thing being hard has got a gender or, some other sort of stigma attached to it. the reality is like none of that stuff matters at all,
Right.
like in reality. And just seeing her being able to overcome these obstacles, and like that's another thing I really admire about her, is like she doesn't show that everything is easy and, you know, magical. Like she shows the hard stuff, and like that's part of being a maker, is like you make mistakes and like things are difficult, and like you have to, you know, try a bunch of times before you get something right. And, you know, just sort of even showing that, I think, is inspiring.
I completely agree. I think that we don't focus enough on it being okay to fail. I think so many of us are focused so much, you know, like she was when she was, you know, telling the anecdote about trying to do her first kind of project in college, and the grad student telling her, you know, why would you expect to be perfect at this when you've never done this before? But many of us, I think, have those expectations that if we aren't just immediately doing something exactly as it should be done from the jump, then, you know, A, we'll never get better, or B, it isn't worth trying. And it is, even if you're not successful ever, it's worth trying. It's worth learning from. I also think what's so great about what she does for other people as an inspiration is her sense of curiosity, which she mentioned. And she thinks, you know, said like curiosity is kind of like what she does as her career. And I feel that same way about a lot of the things that I do. And so I love that. But that sort of thing is infectious. And that's the sort of thing I think when you see people who are curious and are willing to experiment with things, that's something that can spur on that same curiosity in others, which can then lead for them to do really great things.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I mean, and again, like one of the things that I love about what she does is like she's encouraging people to indulge that curiosity. We're all curious, and like way too frequently you get pushed to suppress the curiosity, which is terrible. Like just be curious, like indulge your curiosity.
I couldn't agree more. Indulge your curiosity. That should be like our motto for our podcast.
Yeah.
All right. That is all the time that we have for today. A huge thanks to Zyla Foxland for joining us. And if you have anything that you would like to share with us, please email us anytime at behindthetech@microsoft.com. And you can follow Behind the Tech on your favorite podcast platform, or you can check out our full video episodes on YouTube. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.